All right, everybody, welcome into the Auburn Live Basketball Show. I am Justin Hokanson, joined by Jay Phillips, contributor to AuburnLive.com. Jay, what's up, man? How you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. Got a win last night against Florida despite a very ugly first half, but saw some good things. It was ugly. Auburn still has plenty to work on, but can't complain starting SEC playoff with a win.
Yeah. By the way, I like your background. I like your what are the obbies and the gnomes? Is that like Christmas nutcrackers? What do we got?
Yeah, we got a Christmas nutcracker here, a tiki, a gnome, and then a obby who's standing on a newspaper from the Final Four appearance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's like some
got it all,
special
really.
edition stuff right there. Nice, man. All right, let's talk about this game. Auburn, Florida. Trying to pull up the stats. 12 lead changes, 10 ties. Auburn pulls this thing out 61-58. They're down 3 at halftime. Would have been down 6 if not for that Wendell Green three-pointer. And then the second half was just a back and forth affair. You're right about first and second half. It was definitely a game of halves. Auburn shot 28% from the field in the first half, was 2 of 6 from 3. Florida shot 36% in the first half and was 1 of 8 from 3. Second half, Auburn shot 48% from the field. Florida shot 44%. Both teams still couldn't hit any threes. So for the game, they were combined 3 of 19 from three-pointers. So that never really got going for anybody. But Auburn shot 48% from the field in the second half and only committed 3 turnovers compared to 28% in the first half with 12 turnovers. So completely different second half for Auburn on offense. And Florida picked it up too, which tends to happen with Auburn. If they feel like they've got to press on offense, or if they feel like it's not coming, if they really got to ratchet up the energy to try to produce points on offense, generally their defense struggles or suffers, which it kind of did. I mean, they gave up a little bit more, a few more points, and allowed Florida to shoot a little bit higher percentage in the second half as they tried to get the energy and ramp things up going. Auburn was, let's see, plus 12 in rebounding, 40-28. Auburn had 17 offensive rebounds, which was 5 more than West Virginia got against Florida, which was Florida's season high, allowing offensive rebounds. So 17 is a big number for Auburn there against a team that doesn't give up a lot there. Florida did have 6 blocks to Auburn's 3. Steals were pretty even. Bench points was a weakness for Auburn. Florida outscored Auburn 27-12 on the bench. We talked about that a little bit in the first thoughts. Auburn is not good enough to just rely on their 5 starters. They don't have Jabari and Walker out there. We mentioned in the first thoughts that the entire starting 5 was plus in the box, plus minus. The entire bench was in the minus. And so that's something that's going to have to be corrected. And then really it was carried by Wendell Green, Jalen Williams, and Janai Broome. Wendell finished with 14. Jalen finished with 13. Janai finished with 14. Those 3 scored 31 of, I think, the 38 points in the second half for Auburn. Wendell got to the free throw line, and then Jalen and Janai just started hitting buckets. Probably the one glaring outside of, maybe bench points, the other really glaring negative was free throw shooting. Florida was 17 of 19 on the road. Auburn was 16 of 24 in their own home arena. That's not good enough. That's 8 points at the free throw line in a game that was a 1-point game with Florida with the ball with a chance to win. It shouldn't have been like that. Even with the turnovers, okay, Auburn committed too many. Hit your free throws at home, and it doesn't come down to the last shot. So that's kind of a quick overview, quick stats of the game. All right, give me your sort of thoughts on as you watch that. What were you seeing? What do you think went better in the second half? Just kind of dive into this thing a little bit for me.
I mean, there's a lot to take out of that game too, especially the second half. Like you were saying, one of the things that I've been, the bench point thing was a big deal, I feel like. But I feel like there's a flip side to that as well, where we've been saying that Auburn needs to get some solidified rotations and a little better chemistry going with the guys who are on the court at the same time and stuff. Jalen Williams, Janai Brome, and Wendell Green stepping up, I hope kind of forces that to happen a little bit, even though it's going to take some opportunity away from the bench as well. You saw no minutes to Chance Westry again, a pretty light load for Trey Donaldson again. And that's just because those guys are playing so well. Chance Westry, there's more stuff going on there, I'm sure. But with Wendell Green and Trey Donaldson, you're just not going to see those 20-minute, 10.5 rebound games from Trey Donaldson if Wendell Green's the best player on the court. And that's what Auburn needs him to be. I think, Auburn's best when they're like that. So that was encouraging to me. I feel like Wendell Green also answered a couple of questions there. Last year, the big question was, why does Auburn keep giving the guards the ball in these late games? And why can't Wendell Green make the right decision in a late game? And I think that took away from some of the good things that Wendell and KD did in late games. And this year, Wendell Green has sort of righted that ship. He had big plays down the stretch against St. Louis, big plays away from home and all of Auburn, when he was healthy, and in Cancun. And, big plays, again, making that game-winning layup. And that was just an insanely tough layup that he had at the end there. Double clutch and going onto the other side of the, probably taking some contact in there. I can't remember it quite off the top of my head, but very impressive. So that was huge for me. He's answering the question of, can Wendell Green make the right decision late in games? Can Wendell Green be a go-to scorer? Can Auburn have a go-to scorer at all? And I think Wendell's starting to answer all those questions, Jalen and Janai as well. But that was sort of a big takeaway for me on the plus side, is Auburn's just continuing to build that identity of, we have a guard who can sort of do everything. He's going to be hot and cold at times, but we have this we're building this really high floor with two post players who have just won almost every matchup by the end of the game that they've seen in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, you mentioned Trey Donaldson. I think that a couple things, he played 12 minutes, which is kind of more in line with what he was doing before Georgia State. He had a few 12-minute games, a few single-digit minute games. Georgia State, USC, Washington, he was creeping up to 20 minutes. I think what you saw against Florida was not necessarily an indictment on Trey only getting 12 minutes. I think you saw Auburn really struggling to score. And then the way the second half started, Wendell came out on fire, hit a three, got to the foul line. I think he had like 7 or 8 points in the first few minutes of the second half. And so I think that was just one of those games last night where Wendell had to play. Mm-hmm. Wendell had to play, and he had to lead, and he really was going to have to go. He played 15 of the 20 minutes in the second half. Trey got the other 5. So wasn't necessarily a huge indictment on Trey, other than Trey's done a really good job, but he's not necessarily a true catalyst yet. He's been pretty good at handling the ball. I mean, yesterday he had 2 rebounds, an assist, and a turnover in 12 minutes. So he was fine. Ran the offense. It was fine, but he wasn't necessarily a catalyst to jumpstart things and get things going and create and up the energy on offense the way they needed to against Florida. And so they really had no choice but to go to Wendell. So that is something to watch. And that is, hey, Wendell can't play 28 minutes every SEC game. That's going to be really tough on him. And so at some point, Trey's taken some good steps, but now can he have enough confidence, or can he be a true catalyst? Can he push the ball? Can he attack the basket? Can he be somebody that when he's in there, it's not just kind of holding on and sort of running the offense and expecting other guys? Or maybe you can, if you pair Trey with the right people. Maybe Trey can be that guy if he's in there with a rotation and you've got Janai, if he's in there with Janai and Jalen maybe. But a lot of times that's Wendell, it's the rotation. So it's how do you sort of build something around Trey so that the offense doesn't lag when he's in there and Wendell doesn't have to play a ton of minutes. Because 28 minutes, and 15 minutes in the second half, and then Jalen played 16, Janai played 16. So it's pretty clear he leaned on those veteran guys, those starters. Chris Moore played 13, and then KD played 13 in the second half. Even though he was only 1 of 5 shooting, he did have 3 assists and was bringing some energy in that second half. But Yeah, I mean, you got to like what Jalen did in the second half, but really Janai was. I mean, Wendell was the spark plug, I thought, but Janai was the story of that game. 14 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists. By the way, Janai is. I've written about it now a few times. I think you have too. He's sneaky good now when it comes to assists and
Mm-hmm.
steals and things like that. He didn't have a steal the other night, but going into the game per game, he was leading the team in steals. And then he
He's
dished out 4 assists as the center, as Auburn's center. And so he's got some nice skills in terms of not just scoring and rebounding, but helping and dishing out. So does Jalen Williams really.
mm-hmm.
But 14 and 11 for Janai. And meanwhile, his counterpoint played 27 minutes. His counterpart, Colin Castleton, played 33 minutes. 33 minutes. Colin Castleton was 1 for 6 with 6 points, 4 for 4 from the free throw line. He did have 8 rebounds and 4 assists. Castleton also had 3 turnovers, including the one at the end that resulted in Wendell's layup. I think Castleton had a few blocks too. So he was active on the defensive end. I thought he had a major presence on the defensive end where Auburn was, I thought, hesitant to attack the basket. They were very cognizant of him down low, the way teams were of Walker last year. And I think that kind of messed with Auburn in the first half. I think that made them more tentative than they needed to be. But the job that Janai Broome did on Colin Castleton, manning him up, not letting him get close to the basket, really playing good defense, being in the right position was fantastic. Castleton, if most people remember, he scored 22 points in Auburn last year, and he scored 19 points in Gainesville last year. And that's with Walker Kessler, who was the National Defensive Player of the Year on the floor. He is a very active and athletic and quality player. And so for Janai to go in there and win the center battle 14 and 11 to 6 and 8 was super impressive. And you knew he had to be motivated. Of course, Janai chose Auburn over Florida. He's 2 hours from Gainesville's campus. He had a ton of family in town. And so Janai now all of a sudden, he's had about 3 games now where he's playing like what we thought he would play like. He's getting better. And I think as the SEC schedule kind of keeps going here, I think Janai's got a chance to sort of get used to SEC play, the physicalness of it. And he's somebody to watch now. I think he's starting to come on, looks a little bit healthy. And that would just be huge to go along with Jalen. Those 2 guys could be huge. But I love what Janai's doing right now. Massive game against Florida.
Yeah, definitely. And you were saying on his assists as well, Janai has actually led all Auburn starters in assists for the past 2 games. He had 5 against Washington. Trey Donaldson had 7 against Washington off the bench. So he didn't lead the whole team, but I believe he was either led the team last night or was tied for the lead in the team last night. But either way, also the rebounding has been huge. I've been harping on that a lot lately. Auburn lost the rebounding battle to Georgia State. And Georgia State, they have some solid bigs. They're coached by Jonas Hayes. They're going to be good down low, but you can't be, Auburn has an elite front court for the second year in a row, and they're still at times finding ways to lose the rebounding battle. And I know it's because they're hounding shot blocks and trying to get into transition over everything else, but you just got so much size down there, so much athleticism. You got to be able to do a little better. I think they've flipped the switch in terms of offensive rebounding, and that's sort of how they've gotten back on top. I think they've calmed down on the shot blocking a little bit, but they're definitely going harder on the offensive glass. They've won the last 3 rebounding battles by double digits after that pretty poor performance at Georgia State. And there were a couple other ones that were like that Georgia State game, but that's good. That boosts the overall defense for this team and stuff too. And I think the defense, like we were talking about with Castleton, being able to slow him down and, maybe it's an outlier. Maybe they just got in his head or whatever, but the defensive approach Auburn took at him was really impressive. They threw different bodies at him, double teamed him, brought Flanagan over to who, Flanagan didn't play well offensively at all last night, but he was instrumental in slowing down Castleton. Several guys they threw the double teams at him, threw extra bodies at him, really denied the ball, just took away his shots, took away his actions before they got started. It was an impressive defensive performance there. And I think that's something where, you don't get as many style points for that kind of thing. But when you're talking about not only, can you just stop another team's best player, but there are so many elite big men in college basketball this year. It's, Field of 68 called it the year of the big and stuff. And that's completely accurate. You just look around the SEC, Oscar Tshiebwe, you got, Janai Brome and Dylan Cardwell is top 10 shot blockers at Auburn. And the list goes on, Colin Castleton at Florida. So being able to stop these guys is huge for Auburn. It's just one of those things where you can take another team's best player, and this year we're seeing all these big men who can facilitate offense and score and defend. You take them out of the game, and not only does that give you an advantage on, just straight up an advantage, but it makes life easier for your big men as well if that's who you're relying on.
Yeah, I was looking at the stats from last night. Florida scored with 4:37 left in that game. Florida hit a bucket. Trey Bonham hit a driving layup to put Florida up 54-50 with 4:37. And so Auburn held them to 4 points in the last 4.5+ minutes. 2 of those 4 points were free throws by Colin Castleton. So they allowed 1 basket to Florida in the last 4:37 of that game. Really clamped things down as that game went on. And I thought it was a cool moment at the end. Auburn's got the ball. They're up 59-58. And then Jalen Williams just a really bad pass with 25 seconds left in that game. Tried to look like it was maybe Janai that was cutting.
Yeah.
Thought he could sneak it there for a layup, and just didn't realize who the defender was. Maybe if that's a shorter defender, he doesn't get up as quick as that guy did, but that guy just snagged it.
It seemed like he didn't see the defender at all when he threw the ball.
Yeah.
It was just like Jalen.
Yeah, it was a bad pass from a guy who's a good passer.
Yeah.
And you could see Bruce, you could see them just hands just like, oh my gosh. I mean, I can't remember how much time was on the shot clock when he did that, but 25 seconds, Auburn had a chance there to at least run a little more clock down. I mean, shoot, Jalen could have taken that 3. He was open. That bad pass, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, we just gave Florida a shot to win this game. But then who comes up with the steal on the other end? Jalen Williams.
Yep.
So
Gets
great
the outlet to Wendell too, and
and really got fouled, by the way. Like it's a good thing they didn't call it, but it's a good thing they kind of let it go because it turned into a layup. But Colin Castleton just straight up shoved Jalen Williams to the ground. But that was a good example of Colin Castleton pressing. He's not a guard. He did it earlier in the game where he tried to bring the ball up the court and he charged. Might have been Wendell, or I can't remember. It might have been Jalen. That might have been
Jalen again. Yeah.
Yeah. Where he kind of got out of his element a little bit, and that's what happened there. He was trying to be the guy to make the move, and he was trying to dribble and puts his arm out and really shoved Jalen Williams to the ground. And when he did that, he lost control of the basketball, and Auburn got the steal. So really, Jalen sort of redeemed himself on that other end. So Auburn's 1-0 defensively, really good job. Offensively, great second half. That's encouraging. It's encouraging to see Wendell get a little confidence. It's encouraging to see Jalen and Janai now again. Consistently now, Jalen and Janai are doing their part now, which with this team, anything consistent is a good thing. Any type of signs of consistency from a player or players is a great sign, because I think that's just one of the things that they lack. But you're starting to see some of that specifically with Jalen and Janai. 3 turnovers in the second half, so much better. And that's really impressive considering how much more energy they had. They were trying to speed things up. They were trying to play faster. It wouldn't have surprised me if they had turnovers in the second half, but still scored points because they're trying to make stuff happen. But they did 3. That's all they had was 3 turnovers. And one was one we just talked about, was with 20 seconds left, was a bad pass. So, I mean, you're talking about 2 turnovers in the bulk of the second half and the main play of the second half. So they're 1-0 in conference play. Beat a Florida team, which I don't think we know how good Florida is. I know that, they're not great. We know that. They're now 7-6.
They're super talented.
But there's some talent there. It's not just Castleton. I mean, Kawasi Reeves was awesome. He had 15 points.
4-year guards.
Do I know?
They got several 4-year guards on that team, and Myron Jones from Birmingham, who played at Penn State, and the point guard they have, I think, from maybe St. Bonaventure. He started there for 2 or 3 years. I mean, that's an experienced team with a couple of really talented pieces in Reeves and Castleton. Todd Golden had a little bit of trouble at starting off there, it seemed like. They had that Florida Atlantic loss and a couple of really poor performances that had people going after Golden a little bit. But I think he's, finding some consistency, finding, sort of like what Auburn's doing, finding a way to win over there. And that was an impressive game for them too. I mean, I totally expect Florida to get some good wins this year after seeing how they played last night.
Well, and yeah, and you mentioned it. Really, the Florida Atlantic loss is probably, that. Well, I mean, but hold on. Looking at, Florida Atlantic is 11-1, by the way. I mean, not to get too deep into this, but Florida Atlantic's 11-1. Their only loss is to Ole Miss. Now, they haven't necessarily played anybody, but Florida Atlantic's sitting there 11-1. So Florida has lost there. Florida lost to Xavier. That's a quad one loss. It's by 7. Now, Florida did play West Virginia on a neutral court and get beat by 30. And of course, Auburn goes to West Virginia. That's going to be a tough matchup for Auburn. That's going to be a tough one.
Great matchup too, though. I just getting Bruce Pearl and Huggins in the same spot and seeing how these two teams the physicality.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
I cannot wait for that game. That's gonna be.
Then you got a 21-point loss to UConn. Again, UConn's one of the best. UConn's, that's a top 5 type. Let's see, what are they in KenPom? UConn is number 2 in KenPom.
Yeah, and people have been calling for UConn to be the number 1 team all year.
And then you've got a loss, a 9-point loss to Oklahoma. So Florida came in with 1, 2. Let's see. All 5 of their losses are not just quad 1 losses. They're basically all top 40 losses. Now, some big margins there, 20 points, 30, and then a 7 and a 2. So a couple of big margins, but that 7-5 record and now a 7-6 record. Now all 6 losses are quad 1 losses. And Auburn's a 1A loss because it was on the road. So I'm curious to see how Florida does the rest of the season because I don't think the record – I mean, that's a pretty tough schedule, and they basically lost to the best teams they've played. But there's some good athletic ability there, like we said, with Castleton and Kawasi Reeves, and Trey Bonham made some plays. And let's see if they can develop a little something. But for Auburn, obviously you had to start off 1-0. The schedule's too tough. The SEC's too good. Auburn needs to take care of home court at Neville. They did that. Now they get a week off. They play Georgia on the road. And then they have a chance to be 2-0 as they host Arkansas in that first monster game on January 7th. Obviously, from Wednesday night, Kentucky gets smacked at Missouri.
Yep.
Alabama looks really good at Mississippi State. LSU takes care of Arkansas at home. Arkansas falls on the road, close game in Baton Rouge. Tennessee has a squeaker at Ole Miss. Man, it's the SEC. It's SEC basketball. Right now, Alabama looks like the best team. There's a gap to me between Alabama, not a huge gap, but between Alabama and maybe, Tennessee or Arkansas or somebody you want to put right there in the 2 spot. And then, and then maybe there's a little gap between those teams and maybe where Kentucky and Auburn are. Auburn might be a tad better than Kentucky at the moment, but even Alabama, as good as they are, I don't think they are head and shoulders above the other 4 teams. And so, and you look at Missouri seems to be for real. Mississippi State's still going to be pretty good.
Very impressive.
Missouri, yeah, gosh, they smoked Kentucky. So, look, the SEC is going to be ultra competitive. We talked about Auburn needing to do well in these first 8 games. They're off to a 1-0 start. Did you see anything Wednesday night from some of the other scores? I don't want to go – it's just one game.
Yeah.
One night. But is there anything you saw from the SEC – and from Auburn, what makes you think any differently about Auburn's standing in the SEC after one night?
Yeah, I think so. I think last night was pretty eye-opening in the sense that it looked like, kind of felt like coming into conference play that Auburn was a good bit behind everybody else, that they had the talent, the potential to put it together and be a top 4, top 5 SEC team if everything fell into place. But after last night, it looks like Auburn has a lot more time to get its stuff together. And, it's these teams like, playing Arkansas. Arkansas didn't look great. They're without Nick Smith. That looked like a loss after Auburn's USC game and after the Memphis game. how much confidence did anybody have that Auburn was going to beat that Arkansas team? Now I'm not so sure. It looks like Auburn's going to have a good chance. And I think Alabama too, I think I see a lot of people, even Auburn fans, not kind of worrying about Alabama, but that Mississippi State game, it looks great. It looks like a top 25 win on paper, but Mississippi State's coming off a loss to Drake, and then they just squeaked by Nicholls State by 2 points the game before. So I don't know how impressive that is as a win either, but it's a good win. Alabama's definitely still the best in the conference to me right now. I'm not sure if they're going to be like an unbeatable team or anything, head and shoulders above the rest, kind of like you were saying. But I think that the big overall sentiment that I took from the first night of conference play is that Auburn has a lot of time to get itself together. Maybe not if they want to win the SEC, but in terms of getting a top 4 seed in SEC play and getting a solid NCAA tournament resume together, I think there's time to go.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a work in progress. Yeah, you mentioned Mississippi State. Yeah, what a weird, you're right. They lose to Alabama by 11. That game was, Alabama kind of it was somewhat close, and Bama really pulled away late. They lose to Drake, which is a top 100 team. But then you're right, before that, a 2-point win over Nicholls State, who is, probably in the 160s. A 10-point win over Jackson State, 69-59. Jackson State's in the 300s.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of business. Yeah, some big wins. Really, what's got Mississippi State is a pair of neutral site wins against Marquette and Utah, kind of out of nowhere. Marquette's a quad one. Utah's quad one. Marquette's, let's see, I'm looking at one. They're 25th in KenPom. They're 11th in Torvik. So Mississippi State's got kind of those couple of early wins that you're like, huh. But then now, maybe we'll see kind of what they do. And now Mississippi State, by the way, has to go to Knoxville as they're in their next game. But I agree with you. I think for Auburn, we get a lot of discussion on our board about this Auburn team, and I've tried to tell people even before the season. I tried to tell people that I thought 11-7 in conference for this team would be a fantastic season.
Mm-hmm.
Like not I think that's what they'll go, or that would be good. I think that'd be a very good record in league play for this team. And a lot of people didn't believe me or wanted to act like that was not good enough or expectations should be higher. And you still saw some of that last night in the first half, that Auburn game. Just reading our message board at auburnlive.com, it was I just think people have a little bit of an inflated sense of what this team is, and right now there's not a Jabari, there's not a Walker, there's not an Isaac Okoro. You don't have that dude out there, and so I think people need to take a little bit of a step back on this team and what they are right now. Let's see what they can become, but chill with the expectations of defending the SEC. I mean, maybe. But there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of flaws. I mean, let's just see if this team develops and take a step back on, like we talked about those first 8 games. I thought it gave Auburn a good chance to be 5-3 in those first 8 games, and that wouldn't disappoint me. But then I saw some people saying, "Oh, they should be at worst 6-2, or they better be 7-1." I'm like, hold on, the guys, this is not the Auburn team of the past few years where there's some issues right now that they're trying to work out, and there's some flaws. And so, would you like to be better than 5-3 in those first 8? Yeah, but that wouldn't be terrible for this team at all. And the back half's really tough. We know that. So I think people need to take a step back, let this team develop. I think you're seeing good things from Janai and Jalen in terms of consistency. I think Wendell, that was a good job from him, sort of taking that step in that leadership role and going out there and scoring and being the catalyst that he needs to be. Get back healthy. Wendell healthy is good. A little bit too many turnovers, but still saw. Look, Chris Moore continues to be a player, an active player. A couple rebounds, a couple of assists, a block, 6 or 7 or 8 points. I mean, he continues to play his role really well. I think they need Trey Donaldson to continue to get better. I would say, if looking forward right now in terms of question marks, it's what, if anything, will happen with Chance Westry and Juwan Traore. To me, that's maybe right now at this moment kind of one of the biggest question marks. Is
definitely
okay. Auburn played 10 guys. Chance didn't play. Juwan played like 7 minutes. Can Auburn? Is that the new norm? Is that their rotations? I mean, are we just what's going on with Chance and Yuan, and can they come on? Can they develop? Can they become part of this rotation, or are we going to kind of count them out right now? Which would be shocking because of how good they are and highly recruited they are and what they did in Israel.
Yep.
And then it's just sort of not there. And I don't know all that, like we've talked about. To me, it kind of looks like they lack confidence, but Chance didn't even get in the game. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest question mark is, what are we doing with these two talented freshmen? I mean, Auburn's got to win games. You can't toss these guys out there if they're not confident in what they're doing and whatever. You can't toss them out there in the SEC right now. So how, if at all, do they get in the rotation right now that SEC play has started?
And you could always see an injury kind of force one of them into the lineup, to an extent. What happened with Trey Donaldson? He got his chance and he, stuck with those minutes, hasn't let him go. But it is, seems like Chance Westry is the crazy one too, because Yohan Traore, you kind of understand it. He's new to basketball. He's new to the United States to an extent. It's so much change going on for him that everybody sort of, everybody saw the talent, but everybody also said, if he has I saw a lot of Chuma Okeke development comparisons with Yohan and saying, maybe he'll start to come on at the end of the year and he'll probably get a bigger second year role if he sticks around. And I thought he was going to be better to just how athletic and big he is and fast and coordinated. I thought he was going to make a big splash right away, but I didn't expect Jalen Williams to be this good either. But Chance is just, he looks so good in Israel at times. And the knee procedure was, billed to be no big deal. He's going to bounce right back. It's going to be nothing. And now it's just, they got him back and they tried several different things with him. Nothing stuck. And he's out of the rotation, at least for these past couple of games. And it's strange, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. He's good. He doesn't necessarily do what Auburn is missing. He's not a shooter. He's not really a go-to scoring threat kind of guy. He's a play within the flow of the offense. He'll make some really good passes, some drives when the lane opens up. And the other thing about him is you go back to his high school days, and the one that always sticks out to me is when he was matched up with Jaden Hardy, and he just absolutely clamped up Jaden Hardy, who was, at that time, Jaden Hardy was a top 5 projected draft pick, and Chance just, shadowed him. It was like watching Isaac Okoro play defense, and you don't see that either from him. He loses his assignments on defense. He gets driven by, and, maybe there is something more to this knee procedure. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but it's hard not to because he was so good. He was, such a perfect fit, and now he's not there.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see with him. And you're right. They could get into an SEC game and have a couple good moments. And, the same way Trey did. Trey got in that Georgia State game, had some good moments that helped him build confidence. Then he went to USC, had a few more good moments. And so maybe that's what Chance and Yohan need, or just some good moments.
Even Jalen Williams did that at the end of his freshman season. I can't remember exactly what game it was, the Tennessee game where he threw the alley-oop to himself off the backboard. Yeah. But it was within the last 5 games of the season, maybe that season was cut short, but that he developed a role and carved out a role. So it's not too late. These coaches will allow changes to keep happening. Chris Moore was in the closing lineup last night. Alan Flanagan wasn't. Katie Johnson was back in it. They're still making changes, and so there's still plenty of time for them to do something. But it is, it's baffling that the contributions have been so small from those two.
Yep. Yohan played 7 minutes and had 1 rebound, and so and that's a little frustrating with Yohan too. If you're not in the place to be the scorer or to be confident shooting the 3 and all that kind of stuff, that's okay. In 7 minutes, it's not a ton of time, but get a couple rebounds, draw a foul. I don't know. It's kind of like even when he's in there, he's not in there. I mean, he's just sort of not. He's just. I guess he's not a liability. I don't know that anything bad's happening, but he's just sort of. He's essentially all he's doing is giving somebody a breather. When he's just capable of more than that.
Yeah, really.
We'll kind of continue to watch that. It's sort of where I'm at with this team, is trying to figure out what are the things that are just sort of baked in, and That's what you're going to get. And where's the improvement? Like 3-point shooting, that's baked in at this point. I mean, 3 for 14. They're just not a good 3-point shooting team. They might have some nights where Wendell catches fire and Jalen catches fire and Chris Moore hits a few, and they hit 8 or 9 threes. But that's not really going to be them. Wendell generally takes tough threes. Jalen has got a chance to knock down a few each game. Chris Moore gets some pretty good looks, but that's just something you look at. 3 of 14. Now, what's interesting is on that West Coast trip, they hit 8 threes in both those games.
Yep.
But everything else of the 2 road games, they've hit 8 threes. But then the other games, there's been a lot of low percentages, and then 3 of 14 again. So, 3-point shooting is kind of baked in. But can Auburn cut the turnovers down? Offensive rebounding was really good.
Mm-hmm.
One of the better games they've had offensive rebounding. So there's areas where this team can maximize what they are if they'll stop turning the ball over, shoot a little bit better at the free throw line. Those are not hard things to do. Turn the ball over a little bit less, make a few more free throws, continue to play defense, continue to rebound, and they're a pretty good team. They just can't afford to, like we talk about consistency, they can't afford to have games where they shoot terrible from 3 and also turn the ball over nearly 20 times and also miss 9 free throws. Like that's where you almost get beat at home by an average Florida team. That's when that happens. So
plenty to work on, but it seems like every game they show a little bit of improvement and whatnot. So I think there's still reason to have hope in this team. And
no doubt.
There's still plenty of potential to improve. But
absolutely,
back these past 3 games, there's been something tangible that you can, see that they're doing better and see that something that they changed is improving is a good sign. There's plenty of time. Nobody in the SEC is playing their best basketball except for maybe Missouri, maybe Alabama, but there's time for this team. And I like what I see. I hate some of the stuff I see, but the end of the past few games has been promising.
Yeah. What's crazy about Missouri, by the way, and we'll get out of here, is great. Missouri has 1 loss. It was at home, and Kansas went in there and crushed them by 30.
And that's a rivalry game too, so
But playing at home, I mean, Kansas is a team that Tennessee beat.
They're not as good as we thought. They're not Kansas last year.
Yeah, so Kansas rolls into Columbia and wins by 30. I mean, other than that, Missouri has a 2-point win over you at UCF. Illinois, good win, 20-point win on a neutral floor. And really Kentucky was kind of was sort of come out Missouri is good, but I don't think we know yet. I mean, a bunch of their wins are over teams in the 200 plus in a lot of these rankings. I mean, they've played nobody until Kansas got crushed, beat UCF, beat Illinois, and then that Kentucky game was kind of eye-opening. But again, Kentucky's a team that is not playing all that well either. We'll find out this weekend or next Wednesday. Missouri goes to Fayetteville and plays Arkansas that next Wednesday, and it looks like I guess that would be both of their second games.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if Arkansas plays. I wonder if everybody's got off this weekend. Looks like everybody may have off this weekend, just to kind of get a breather. So Missouri, Arkansas, that'll be a big one. So Arkansas gets Missouri and then has to go Auburn and Alabama. But yeah, so Missouri still, again, when we look at the teams in the conference, Missouri is sitting there at 12-1 and smokes Kentucky, but they've played nobody. Yeah. So we don't know. Kentucky's not playing that great. There's just a lot still to learn about the SEC. I think outside of Alabama, I think Alabama is probably the most proven commodity at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I think it's just good for fans to take a step back that have followed Auburn in the past. Take a step back. Let's see how this team develops. It's a different team. It's a different team than we had last year. Let's see how they develop. There's a lot of teams in the SEC that have got their flaws too. There's no juggernaut out there.
Exactly.
So we'll just kind of see how this thing rolls on. All right, man. We'll be on the lookout for Jay's breakdown of the Auburn-Florida game as he dives into that a little bit in the next couple of days. I don't know when that's coming out. Be on the lookout probably Thursday or Friday for that. And then we'll have a week off, and we'll see how Auburn does at Georgia. Auburn will probably still sit around 20th in the rankings, 17th in Ken Palm, and now gets another week to sort of refine things, get healthy, and go to a Georgia, a game that Bruce Pearl always wants to win.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Jay. We'll get out of here. Appreciate everybody joining us. AuburnLive.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit notifications as well. And hop on and subscribe to AuburnLive.com for all the latest premium information, message board, intel, scoop, all that good stuff. For Jay, I am Justin. We'll see you next time.